Last Thursday, something surprising happened in my living room that I still can't fully get, but it wasn't noisy, it was quiet. And it started with a folder, a gentle knock, and a door that didn't shut quick enough. What began as a normal visit from my husband's work friend became a moment that changed how I saw myself. And him, you won't believe how something so tiny could wake up feelings I thought were gone for good. But before we jump in, tell me, from which city are you watching us today? I love seeing the places you're from. It makes these moments we share feel even more linked. Now let me tell you what happened that quiet afternoon. My name's Elaine. I'm 59. I've lived in this house for 27 years, raised 2 boys in it, painted every room myself, and could tell you right where each creak in the hall comes from. I've always liked the quiet. I still do, but that day the quiet felt different. It was a Wednesday afternoon, warmer than usual for late March. The windows were open, letting in just enough wind to make the curtains move like they had something to say. I was cleaning up the living room when my phone made a sound. It was a message from my husband. Jim will drop off the Peterson files at the house around 3. I told him you'd be home. I hadn't met Jim before. I'd heard his name lots of times over dinner. Jim said the board might not agree, or Jim thinks the new project time is not real. He always seemed like a smart one at work, practical, steady, maybe a bit serious. I looked at the clock, 2:48. I didn't change clothes. I was in a loose light blue top and soft cream pants, nothing special, just comfy. I ran a brush through my shoulder-length hair, more from habit than need, then went back to fixing the throw pillows, not because I was worried. It was just, well, you want your home to look nice when someone new comes in, don't you? At exactly 3:02 the knock came. I opened the door, and there he was, Jim, tall, dark-haired, with a little grey at the sides, maybe late 40s, early 50s, button shirt, sleeves rolled up. He had this calm face, but his eyes were warm in a way I didn't expect. "Hi, Mrs. Langston." Jim, his voice was soft but clear. "Elaine," I fixed, offering a small smile. "Please come in." He stepped inside, holding a thick brown folder in one hand. "Sorry to bother." His Mark said it would be okay, of course, you're right on time. I let him into the living room the moment his shoes stepped on the rug. I heard the door behind us start to close slowly, too slowly. It was like the air held it, then let it shut with a soft final click. We both turned to the sound, then looked back at each other. Something in the stillness made my breath stop. "Should I just leave this on the table?" he asked. "Yes. Sure, thank you." I pointed to the coffee table. He put the folder down gently, like not to mess anything around it. I watched his fingers stay for a second longer than needed. Then he stood straight and looked around the room. "This is a pretty space, cozy, peaceful, thank you. I've always tried to make it feel like a home." "You've done a good job," he said, his tone more personal now, almost thinking we stood there a few feet apart, the afternoon sun making long lines across the wood floor. He looked toward the window and took a small step closer to it. "I don't think I've ever seen this view from here before." He said, "You can see all the way to the park on clear days." "Yes, it's my favorite part." There was something different in how he stood. Then, not rushed, not checking his watch, like he wasn't in a hurry to leave. I offered him some water, partly to be nice, partly to give myself something to do. He said yes, followed me into the kitchen. I could feel him behind me, not too close, but enough that I noticed. I handed him the glass, and our fingers touched, just quick, but enough. He looked at me, then more straight than before. "Your husband's lucky," he said, "quiet to come home to this to you." It surprised me, the words, the realness in them. "That's nice of you," I said, trying to smile, but my voice caught a little. There was nothing wrong in his tone, no hint, but the nice words went deeper than they should, not because they were bold, but because I saw how long it had been since someone noticed me like that. We went back to the living room. He picked up the folder again and tapped it lightly against his hand. "I should go," he said, but didn't move just yet. I nodded, stepping back toward the door. He followed, but slow on purpose, and when he got to the door, he stopped with his hand on the knob, turned halfway to me. "Thank you for letting me in, Elaine." There was a pause in his voice, a quiet stress that made it sound like he meant more than just the room. I opened my mouth to say, "You're welcome." but said nothing, just gave a small nod. He turned the knob and opened the door, letting the wind in again. Then he stepped out, but he didn't close the door right away. He turned, looked at me once more, then closed it slowly, like he wanted to give the quiet one more moment, like part of him didn't want to leave just yet, and maybe part of me didn't want him to that night. A night I lay in bed with the ceiling fan buzzing above me. Its beat steady, almost like a spell. Mark was next to me, already going to sleep. Breathing soft, he didn't ask about Jim's visit when he got home. Just thanked me, kissed my cheek, and went to the kitchen to heat up leftovers from lunch. Normal as always, routine. Known, but my mind wouldn't calm. It kept going back to that moment, Jim's voice, the way his eyes stayed, the way he'd said thank you for letting me in. That sentence played over and over in my head like a tune. I couldn't shake. There was nothing too much in it, nothing bad. And yet there was something, a wave in calm water. A feeling that stayed in the room even after the door shut the next morning. I went through my usual things: coffee, morning news, watered the plants by the window. But the air felt different, charge, like it had taken in the energy from the day before, and didn't know what to do with it. It was almost noon when I got a message from a number I didn't know. Hi, Elaine, sorry to text without warning. This is Jim. Just wanted to thank you again for the warm welcome. Hope it wasn't a bother. Files looked great on your table, by the way. Great taste. I stared at the message for a long time, thinking if I should answer, it was polite, safe, but it wasn't needed. That's what made me stop finally. I typed, not a bother at all. Thank you again for coming by the views. Still just as nice today, and sent it. No smiley, no extra mark, just enough. Less than a minute later, his answer came. That view is hard to forget. I could have laughed at how clever it was if it hadn't made my chest tighten just a bit. I set the phone down, walked to the kitchen, and busied myself cleaning a sink that was already clean for the next few days. Life went on. Mark was busy with work, the boys were caught in their own lives. No one noticed the soft change in my energy, not even me at first, but I did start checking my phone more often, not waiting but seeing. Thursday evening around 6, another text came, heading back from a client nearby. Passing close to your area, thought I'd let you know. No hint, just a fact. I typed, long day. His answer, long enough. Yours, uneventful. Sometimes those are the ones you remember. I didn't answer that one, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure what I was stepping into. I'd never been the type to flirt, never even felt the want. Loved my husband, I had built a life with him. But love changes shape after 30 years. It becomes strong, reliable, more like a roof over your head than fire in your chest. Jim's being there was something else, not fire, not storm, just knowing. That was the word. I felt known again, of being looked at, of being seen. On Friday, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I'd opened the door, and there he was again. Jim, I hope it's okay, he said, holding up a small white envelope. Mark left these signed forms on his desk. I was nearby and thought I'd pick them up. I blinked, then nodded, of course. Come in. He stepped inside, slower than last time, eyes looking around the space again, like he was remembering it. I got the envelope from Mark's home office and handed it to him. Thank you, he said, then added, do you always smell like vanilla? It surprised me, my lotion barely there. I thought. I smiled lightly. Suppose I do. He nodded. It suits you. We stood there again, same living room, same quiet, but it felt more breakable. This time, like something would snap if either of us moved too fast. Can I offer you something? This time I asked. Tea or wine? Why did I say wine? He thought, then smiled. Tea would be lovely. I pointed to the kitchen, and he followed. I could feel the space between us getting smaller, not in body, but in feeling. He stood by the counter as I filled the kettle. The quiet between us wasn't weird. It was thick, heavy in the best way. You have a calm way about you, he said, soft. It's rare. I turned, met his look. You notice things most people don't, maybe, he said. Or maybe most people don't take the time to look. He didn't move closer, didn't reach out, but the moment stayed his. Words wrapped around me like a warm wrap. I hadn't known. I missed we drank tea on opposite sides of the table, barely touching the cups. Just talking light at first, books, music, nothing risky, but under everything was a flow. We both felt not a spark. Something deeper, like we had tripped into a talk we weren't supposed to have, but needed anyway. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't say goodbye right away, just looked at me like he was trying to remember something big. I'm not sure why I came. Today, he said, voice low. I told myself it was about the papers, but maybe it was something else I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He stepped to the door, opened it, then turned back and added, thank you for letting me in again. And once more he closed the door slowly on purpose, like we both knew something had started, but neither of us had named it yet. Days after were quiet again, but not the old kind of quiet, not the comfy, unseen beat of every day. This quiet had weight, feel like the calm that follows a question not answered. I went about my life as usual, folding laundry, buying food, wiping counters that didn't need it, but inside I was somewhere else. I was still in that moment, by the door, still feeling the warmth of his fingers against mine, still hearing his voice in the hall. I didn't hear from Jim for almost a week. No texts, no surprise visits, no small messages about the view or tea or quiet, and I told myself that was best because nothing had happened. And yet something had. And I needed room to understand it. Mark stayed fully not knowing, caught in his usual rounds of work and late-night papers. He was a good man, was still the one I picked 30 years ago. But marriage changes over time. It becomes a strong place. Safe known. But sometimes when you've lived in it long enough, you start to forget what the outside air feels like. Then one morning, as I stood in the kitchen watching sunlight spill across the counter, my phone buzzed a single line. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met at a different time? I stared at it for so long, the screen dimmed before I could think of an answer. There was no name, but I didn't need one. I type sometimes, but we didn't. We met now, he answered. I'm grateful we did, and that was it. Later that week, Mark had a company dinner, one of those fancy things with name tags and warm catered food. I almost said no, but something in me said yes. Maybe I wanted to see Jim again. Maybe I just wanted to see him in the setting of that world, my husband's world, to remind myself of the lines that still were there. The hotel ballroom was full of talk and soft music. I wore a navy dress I hadn't pulled out in years. Mark was busy talking with work friends when I saw Jim across the room. He saw me right away. His eyes didn't search the crowd. They landed straight on me, like he'd been waiting. He didn't come over right away. He waited nicely. I liked that finally we ended up at the same table, sitting across from each other, separated only by a flickering candle and the low talk of others' talks. He leaned in a bit and said, you look beautiful tonight. I didn't blush. I didn't look away. I just answered, thank you. And then I asked the question that had been with me all week. What are we doing, Jim? His face didn't change. He was quiet for a beat before answering. I think we're remembering something most people forget as they get older. What's that? That we're still able to feel, that hit something deep, not just because he said it, but because it was true. But as the night went on, I started to see him differently. Not less kindly, not less softly, but more clearly. I watched how he smiled at others, how he poured a drink, how he listened. And it hit me, maybe I wasn't pulled to him exactly. Maybe I was pulled to what he showed back to me, the version of myself I hadn't seen in years, the woman who was still interesting, still visible, still wanted. It wasn't about Jim, not really. It was about feeling alive again. When the dinner ended, we walked to the lobby together, just the two of us, and stepped the air between us buzzing with everything not said. He stopped before the valet can. I tell you something, of course. You reminded me that I still have parts of myself I'd forgotten. That I'm not just a suit and a deer. Reminded me that I'm still here, that I'm more than a mother or a wife, that I matter. We stood there for a moment, both of us knowing this would likely be the last time, not because we didn't want more, but because we both knew where the line was, and we respected it. That counted. He reached out and gently touched my hand one last time. Not to pull me closer, not to ask for anything, just to say, Thank you. Then he turned and walked away. And this time there was no door to close slowly, just a quiet goodbye when I got home that night. Mark was already in bed asleep, the soft sound of his breathing filling the dark room. I stood at the window for a long time looking out into the calm. The same park view that had always been there, but something in me had changed. I wasn't looking for what might have been. I wasn't hurting with sorry. I felt whole, not because of Jim, but because he had held up a mirror and reminded me that there was more to me than the quiet life. I had gotten used to that even at 59. I could still feel deeply, still be moved, still choose how my story goes, and in that moment, I chose peace, not the peace of quiet, the peace of knowing who I am, and that I am still growing. Line nodded, tears starting at the corners of my eyes, and you